You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. You wanted it, you got it. A radio program that helps teach you options trading inside and out, basic to complex. This is Options Bootcamp. Whether you want to learn how to protect your portfolio, generate income, or even become a master of volatility, the Options Bootcamp drill instructors will break it all down for you. Now, let's get you into peak options trading shape. Here are your Options Bootcamp drill instructors.
All right, everybody. That music means it is Education Wednesday time once again to dive deep into the educational wells of the options market. Time for Options Bootcamp. My name is Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as, of course, from the ever-compelling Options Insider Radio Network. No matter how you listen, a lot of you on demand, we love all you folks. Of course, if you like to step up and get exclusive, fun content, great shows, a lot of question and answer opportunities with, well, actually, a lot of the great authors we're going to talk about today and a whole bunch more. Well, then maybe you want to take a gander over there at the Secret Club, theoptionsinsider.com/secret club. Shh, it's a secret. So it's a fun one. It's a fun group. Of course, we have great, unusual activity, fun stuff in there as well. Live streams, all kinds of good stuff, and a whole bunch more. Great fun prizes. A lot of you joining us over the past couple of weeks. Glad to see so many new names and faces. Enjoying the secrecy of the club. Remember, it's secret. Don't tell anybody. Just for you. And all you folks out there who want to engage above and beyond. And, of course, however you listen live after the fact, keep hitting us up. Those questions, those comments, those insights really do help shape programs like this. And I don't need to remind you guys on Options Bootcamp. You guys are not reticent at all with the questions, and we love it. Keep them coming. And joining me to help wade through all this options educational goodness, we have my compatriot, my partner in options crime, author of 1 or 2 or 27 options-oriented tomes, none other than Mr. Dan Passarelli, the founder of Market Taker Mentoring, a.k.a. Mr. P, welcome back to the program, sir.
Hey, my man. Good to be here.
Is that catching on with the cool kids? Was that what they're calling it now?
It is, yeah.
Yes, I'm glad I could help your branding for you, sir. But before we dive into all the fun stuff we have planned for today, all the kids want to know, sir, what's your rating?
Oh, well, today what popped up on Options Radar, there was a few things, but the strongest one I would say is Rocket, RKT. I've already got some deltas in there, positive deltas, so I'm in good shape, but we had some of our folks jump in on the signal this morning, and that's pretty exciting. It's up a little bit. We'll see how it plays out through the rest of the day.
That one seems way too expensive for you, $15.72. Usually you like a nice $3 stock, and you're buying 50-cent calls, right, sir?
Yeah, well, sometimes. Maybe not 50 cents, but I've done my share of those 50-cent type calls.
What was the play today? What was the strike?
Today in Rocket, well, the 18.5 calls popped up, but with Options Radar, we do some of that trading the exact same thing, but I'm kind of a big fan of just, waiting for a signal that people are loading up on calls and then kind of using your smarts and picking the strike that makes sense. Makes the most sense, I should say. Excuse me. Just had some lunch.
What fun is being sensible, sir? You want to raid, you want to go crazy, you want to put the cutlass in your teeth, you want to jump onto the other ship and, let the chips fall where they may, sir. That's what raiding is. at least to me. You're far too sensible for a radio. You should call it the Options Pragmatist. That should be the new name of your program over there. Not quite as sexy, but maybe conveys more of the sentiment. As we keep on rolling, it is time for basic training.
All right, Boot, it's time to get in line. What you're going to do is learn. You're going to learn how options work. Do you hear me? Yes, you're going to learn options trading inside and out, basic to complex. There will be no failures. Do you hear me? Yes, pull in, prepare to learn. Yes,
all right, everybody. Welcome to basic training. Going to mix things up. Going to do things a little bit differently today. We had a question recently that got me thinking. It was a question along the lines of options books and which ones we like and things along those lines. And I always only have jokingly at the start of the show, always say Dan is the author of 27 options tomes, but he is. We are fortunate enough to have an author of some popular options books here on the program with us. And so it got me thinking with that question and everything else. You get these queries along these lines a lot. We've never actually done a show about it. So we thought, let's dive in a little bit. Let's talk about your bookshelf, your options bookshelf, which in these days could easily be virtual. Could be your digital bookshelf, perhaps even your Audible library if you are so inclined. In talking in terms of your overall options bookshelf, what are some books you should be considering for a lot of you I know who are complete brand spanking new to this market? This is all new to you. What are some books you should probably have on your shelf to help ease your way in? Mr. Dan, since you are joining us here today, and you have written one or two, one of those ones which when I asked you on our last show, I think when we had this question, when I asked you which of your books you would recommend for that newcomer, that beginner, you said it was clearly Trading Options Greeks. That's kind of the book I think a lot of people know you for the best. So let's start there. What is the point of Trading Options Greeks? What are some of the takeaways for newer traders to the market, and why do you think it's important for newcomers who are just discovering the world of options to read your book?
Well, I would say it's good for newcomers for sure, but I mean, also for more experienced traders as well. Like when I was first talking with Bloomberg, since then Wiley has purchased Bloomberg, so it's Bloomberg Wiley. Comes up either way, I think. But, I was like, well, what do I want to write on? And so I started looking around to see what's already been covered, because if there's already some great resources out there, I mean, I don't need to just write one for the sake of writing one. Like I want to provide value, help people, And I was like, well, let's see on the Greeks what's been written. Maybe there's been something great written on delta neutral or on theta strategies or on whatever. And I looked around, there's nothing written on the Greeks. I was like, wait a minute, what? How can there not be a book that teaches people about the option Greeks? Like it's something that I use every single day of my life on the trading floor and every single day since. It's not even possible to trade options without using the Greeks. And the better you are with them, the better of a trader you're going to be. So like that really just, I was like flabbergasted. I was like, yeah, I'm writing a book on the Greeks and, just flesh the rest of it out and put in a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to make it the most valuable thing that I could.
What would you say is the key takeaway for new traders looking at that book and when they read Trading Options Greeks? What are they going to come away with, sir? Aside from knowing what the Greeks are.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and you know what? That's actually a great discussion point because it's not just knowing what the Greeks are. It's being able to really use them and to really deeply understand what they are. Like, I mean, anybody can memorize a definition, right? But like that doesn't really do you any good. It doesn't make you able to trade with them. Being able to like really understand exactly what they mean, how they relate to one another, how to use them all individually and in concert with one another, how to use them to set up trades and to think about your trades and to manage your trades and to exit your trades. Like it just makes every single step in the process of your trading better and more efficient.
Got folks in the live stream listen to Dan and I talk about books here on Options Bootcamp. We got Mr. Unlimited in there. He's liking your Rocket call there, Dan. Says, Rocket is something I always trade. I had 300 shares assigned from Black Friday that I just sold covered calls on today. So there you go, Dan. You lured him to the dark side of Rocket. And now it sounds like he's wheeling in and wheeling out just like you over there. He's raiding while you're being the pragmatist over there. So, all right. And we also have Age of Del Aquarius in there. He says, what do you think of Ewan Sinclair's books? I've heard him as a guest on vol views. Well, stay tuned. Maybe we'll get to that in a little bit. All right, next up on our trading bookshelf, Dan obviously has other books. We're going to come back to those in a little bit. But Dan, I know for me, and I'm assuming it was the case for you, when we were first ushered into this business, as wee babes there, fresh out of school for me, I think you were like 42 when you first walked on the floor, but each had different paths. And and they said, okay, kid, you're going to learn about this. You're going to stand in the back in the crowd, be a clerk. You're going to learn this stuff. You're going to do training at night, every night after the close. And you're going to read this book. This is the Bible. And they handed this pretty thick book to me. And what it was Shelley Natenberg's Options, Volatility, and Pricing. It is still what I and a lot of professionals in the business view as kind of the Bible of the business. It's what the pros use to really cut their teeth on this stuff. Why is this book so important? Well, it's written for a bit of a different audience. It's really written for people who want to be options professionals. And it details concepts that aren't touched on in a lot of other books. At least back then, they certainly were not. Things like, of course, volatility, implied volatility, how that impacts pricing. That's covered in a lot of books now. But also skew. That was an interesting component to that. And that was really my first introduction to that. And then, of course, it was nice to be able to see those theoretical concepts in the book and then go out to the S&P pit or the IBM pit, whatever it was at that time, and see them in practice. And that combination, of course, made a world of difference for me out there. Now, I'm a little bit reluctant to recommend this book now because I did a cursory search right before showtime to see how available it is. And unfortunately, this book has kind of reached that elevated status where it's kind of more viewed as a textbook now than just a traditional options book. So you can't really get it. It's very hard to find, and it's very expensive as a result. In fact, if you want to go buy it new on Amazon right now, it's trading for over $250. It's ridiculously expensive. So don't do that. And then you can quote-unquote rent it, which I didn't know Amazon even had this. You can rent it like a textbook for a mere $56. You could rent it. Even the audiobook is $26. So this is a pricey one. I'm sure you could probably find it secondhand. It's been around forever. Or maybe look at some other stores. Keep an eye on maybe if there is. I didn't see a Kindle version, but maybe there is one or some other sort of online version that should be more manageable. It's definitely a book you should read. It's not written for the consumer audience per se, so it's a little dry. But in terms of information, I think it's kind of hard to beat this. If you really want to make options trading a focus of your trading lifestyle, I think it's hard to beat Natenberg. Dan, was that your experience as well? Did they hand you the Natenberg book when you first got on the floor? And what are your thoughts about this book?
Man, you must have been like on the golden path. I had to buy my own copy.
They gave me one. I was a premium dude.
Yeah, that was the first. And we'll talk a little bit more about this. This might seem a little bit more cavalier than it sounds, but it's the only options book that I read. But we'll wait till later in the segment to justify that statement. But yeah, I would say that Natenberg's book is the definitive holy grail. It's the best book out there. Everyone should read that. It does have the reputation of being dry, but you have to have a little bit of a penchant for some nerdiness to be an options trader, I think. So if that's you and you can make it through that book, you probably have the right mindset to be an option trader.
That's true. It's a little bit of a test there as well. That says a lot coming from a fellow options author. That this is the one book you need to read. In fact, I'm looking at the blurb for Amazon. I just checked again. There is no Kindle version, strangely enough. But you can, like I said, get the Audible version if you're an Audible member. Just use a credit. It's very well worth it. Or you could buy it for $27. Just use a credit. It's cheaper. But in general, the blurb on Amazon is what every option trader needs to know, the one book every trader should own. And that's pretty much says it in a nutshell. If you're looking, you're new to the space, and you want to, again, this one's hard to find, so maybe the Audible is the best way to go. And usually if you do Audible, they will also offer you some supplementary materials if there are charts and graphs, and in this case of this book there are. Then I think they will offer those as a kind of a supplementary download, so you're not going to miss those. And obviously we like the spoken word format here. I think you can convey a lot of concepts through that as well, but that book is not designed for that, so just bear that in mind. But yeah, the cheapest way to get it may be just, unfortunately, the audio book. All right, now let's go on to another one. And Dan, you mentioned the only book you've read is Natenberg. In the broad public, a lot of people hold this one up as kind of like, the Bible or the Holy Grail. It's funny. The pros see Natenberg. I think a lot of the public look at the Macmillan book as the big book. And it's hard to argue. It sold 200,000 copies, something crazy like that. It's Options as a Strategic Investment. It's on its 5th edition. So clearly, they're doing something right. People like this one out here. Like you, Dan, weirdly enough, this is kind of like the black hole in my options book expertise. I've never actually read the Macmillan book. I know Larry, he's been on the network a bunch of times. For some reason, I've never gotten around to actually reading his book. So I'm going to give you a quick blurb of it. The description says it's written for investors who have some familiarity with the options market. They call it the comprehensive reference. Different solutions using index options and futures to protect your portfolio, improve your returns, tax laws for options writers. Also in the 5th edition, they add in some interesting updates, including buying and selling strategies using leaps, which is, again, not a use case a lot of people have, but interesting nonetheless. A thorough analysis of neutral trading. I think he means delta neutral there, as well as detailed guidance for investing in preferred equity redemption cumulative stocks or perks. So some interesting, weird stuff in the 5th edition. Also, an extensive overview of futures and futures options, if you like our TWIFO program. That could be useful as well. So this one, again, this is kind of what a lot of people hold out there as a gold standard in terms of kind of the mass market Bible. 200,000 copies, can't be wrong. People obviously like it. Dan and I, for whatever reason, have not read this one. It kind of just went off my radar. Dan, do you have any familiarity with Options as a Strategic Investment now in its 5th edition, sir?
Yeah, I haven't read it, but I know Larry well, and I would, even though I didn't read it, I would probably recommend that one as well. I have heard that one be referred to as the Bible on options trading by people that I know, love, and trust, and so I would definitely recommend that one as well.
That's funny. I always thought of Natenberg as that, right? But some people, you're right, do view the Macmillan one. So a bit of a competing Bibles. Which Bible do you go for? The King James? You go for some other edition out there? What is your Bible of choice? For me, it's Natenberg, but to each their own. If you like Macmillan, you can't go wrong with that one as well. By the way, my enduring memory of this and Larry, I just happened to notice when I was looking up the blurb there for it. It says he won the Sullivan Award back in 2011, which is the options industry's kind of lifetime achievement award. I remember that because I was there. And he was sitting next to me at my table at the time. And he was about to win this Lifetime Achievement Award. And Dan, it was at the time weeklies were kind of just becoming a big thing. And the only thing he could talk about, he would not shut up about how awesome it was to write weekly options. He couldn't believe how much premium he was getting. He was in love with weekly options. And and then he went up and gave a speech and came right back and just kept talking about selling weeklies. He couldn't get enough of them. That's terrifying to me that was 10 years ago. It doesn't seem like it was that long ago. It was the OIC in Savannah. I remember it well. But I digress. So another one interesting, it could be, depending on your viewpoint, that could be your Bible. And then we've got another one you may have heard if you're on the network before. The author floats around. He does a show after this one on our network, which is geared again towards options education. It'll be coming up again later today. This is the Options Playbook. And it's by our buddy, Mr. Overby over there, the host of OPR. And it is exactly what the title says. It's a great introductory course for new traders, which again is the point of what we're talking about here. What are good books for newer traders? So you're coming in, you don't know anything about options. It's going to give you an overview of what we were talking about, the Greeks and options pricing and all those things. Then it's going to walk you through a series of plays, offensive and defensive plays. So you want to get a little bit of appreciation. You want to gain some capital. You go on the offense. You're going to learn about buying calls and buying verticals and things like that. And then you want to maybe get some income components. You're going to have those in there, your covered calls, your short puts, your wheel trades, all that fun stuff. And then, of course, defensive plays as well. It's going to walk you through from beginner to advanced. And the nice thing about this book is twofold. Obviously, it's available on Amazon. It's fairly cheap. We actually give it away a lot. It's one of the ones we offer when you win our Pro Trading Crate, which is out there for our secret club members. When you win that, you get a choice of a bunch of different books. One of them is Dan's, one of them is Brian's, and you could choose this one to win for yourself. And I like this one. I've given it to a lot of people as a good starter, friends and family who don't know anything about options. You can look at this one and it kind of walks them through. It's not that intimidating of a book. It's certainly not like handing them a Natenberg and saying, go read in the corner. This one has a little bit more visual style to it. It's a little bit less intimidating. And so it's a good one if you're still a little bit scared for these markets. And the nice thing about it, they have a companion website, optionsplaybook.com. So you don't even have to buy the book. It's available there completely for free. All the same stuff is on the website, so you can just go through it. And then on top of that, you have the companion podcast, which is now well over 100. I forgot how many episodes we have of Option Playbook. Quite a bit, hundreds of episodes. I think we're closing in on, is it possible we're closing in on 400? I think it might be. I think we just had the 300 episode spectacular. I think we're closing in on 400. So quite a few episodes of Options Playbook to serve as an accompaniment to the book. So you have the book, you can buy it on Amazon, it's fairly cheap, bunch of different editions. There's a Kindle edition, I do believe, as well. It's only like 20 odd bucks, so it's nowhere near the $260 or whatever you're going to pay for a Natenberg. Or even Macmillan is still somewhere in the 50s, I think. So those can get pricey. This is much more reasonable, it's much more approachable, and it has a lot of companion pieces that go along with it. The website and hundreds of episodes of Options Playbook Radio to explain all the concepts in much more detail. And Brian's also very approachable. You can shoot him up an email. You can ask it on our show. You can hit him up over there. He's on Twitter now. He wants you guys to hit him up on Twitter at Brian Overby, Overby is the place to go. And he will answer your questions there as well. So if you want a nice, approachable, not that intimidating, kind of easy to understand guide, maybe for you, maybe for someone who's getting into options that I think Options Playbook, you could certainly do a lot worse. So there you go. Check it out for yourselves. You got a second in the chat here. A couple of our listeners saying Options Playbook is the best website book to give your friends when they ask you what more there is than buying a call. I like that. That's true. A lot of people these days are just fixated on buying calls. And I know a lot of you in the audience could probably fall into that category. And when you realize there's more to life than that, that's a good suggestion for Playbook. We have a second here saying I probably go Playbook first, and then Macmillan, then Natenberg as your trading gets more sophisticated. Yeah, that could certainly work. A nice kind of introductory, and then a next tier, and then Natenberg is kind of the big dog for you. It's a lot to bite off. We give you that caveat up front, but it's been kind of the gold standard for a long time for a reason. But Mr. P, we're not done with your stuff. I joke you have 27 options, Tone, but actually, how many books have you actually written on options, sir?
Well, I've written two. Trading Option Greeks is in its second edition, and it was also published in Simplified Chinese. I wrote The Market Taker's Edge, which I really love as well. And then, I was part of a couple other books, and where some authors sort of, contacted me, and they were like, we'd love if you would write a chapter in this book that I'm writing. And to tell you the truth, I forgot what they are, but I know there's two of them.
So clearly they are deep recommendations for our audience, sir.
I know. What I want to say maybe it was Charles Cottle, or it might have been Charles Cottle.
Oh, the Risk Doctor, yes.
Yeah, I think it was him. I'd hate to, I'd hate to be wrong here, but yeah, I feel like it might have been him.
All those years of bass playing ruined your memory, sir.
Yeah, exactly. And then it was a Chinese group, and I don't even think that book was published in English, but they took a chapter that I wrote on straddles.
Dan, huge in China, by the way. Can't go there without getting mobbed. He has no idea what they're saying to him, but he knows he's huge over there. Well, you mentioned Market Taker's Edge, just kind of like your newest book out there. Give us a quick overview of that. And what are some of the takeaways that might be interesting for newer traders, sir?
That book was written from the professional trader standpoint for the non-professional. Because, I think that even though retail traders don't trade like professional traders, if they understand the way professional traders think, and they understand the way market makers think, so that they can successfully trade, against them, arguably, and with them, arguably, that retail traders can be a lot more successful. And so that's the point of that. And a big point of that is the concept. Well, there's two big points, I think. One is sort of the symbiotic relationship between the market makers and the market takers, because despite the fact that we say, that we trade against each other, that's not really necessarily always the case. There is definitely a benefit. It's two completely different uses of options, but trading the same instruments, which in and of itself provides an edge, and sort of naturally creates noise for the other party. Retail traders create noise, an opportunity, edge for professional traders, and then professional traders, specifically vol arbitrage traders, they create more liquidity, and they create their own sort of noise or edge in the market that retail traders can take advantage of. So I think there's some really useful, interesting concepts there. That was my intent. And so, that's basically what it is in a nutshell.
It's funny. Amazon clearly has a hierarchy and an order to which they view the options bookshelf as well. Because if you search for any of the first 4 books that I talked about, Dan, could say, I search for Natenberg or Macmillan or yours. It says, these are the other books everybody buys, and it's always 3 others. It's yours, and then there's Natenberg in there, and then there's Overby's in there. So they view those 4 books as kind of being like they should be on everyone's bookshelf. The algorithm has clearly lumped you all together. You are forever linked, Dan, with Natenberg and Macmillan and Mr. Overby on there on the options bookshelf. So I guess you could do worse. There's worse company than that, Dan.
2 out of 3 ain't bad.
I'm gonna tell Brian you said that, but I'm just kidding. I know. Does he still owe you money like Uncle Mike from our election thing from last year, or are you flat with Overby?
That deadbeat Uncle Mike still owes me money.
Oh, less said about that guy, the better. He has a book. I'm not going to plug his book because he owes you money. But you mentioned other people on the network, and of course, we have had a lot of authors. Been fortunate enough to have a lot of them on the network on a regular basis, and also come in on different shows over the years. I've also been part of a few books and have some blurbs you may see out there on some jackets for different options-oriented tomes with some jerk from this network on it. One of those is the Options Traders Hedge Fund. Our buddy over there, the Meatball, wrote that with a partner, I believe Dennis Chen was his name. And they took a different approach, kind of what Dan was saying earlier about a more take your trading and view it from a professional perspective. So how to view it as a business and how to generate income from it on a regular basis, how to protect it. Different kind of viewpoint than you see in a lot of the other books. I thought it was interesting, and I was happy to give them a blurb for that. Another one, our buddy Mr. Rhodes, if you want to get product specific, I gave him a nice little blurb for his upcoming tome, newest edition really, which is the VIX Trader's Handbook. So again, that's more of a product specific thing. If you're looking to cut your teeth in the volatility realm, so maybe you've graduated from some of the other books we've talked about, and you want to maybe get a little bit more product specific, then you can do worse than Russell out there, kind of giving you the lay of the land from a volatility trading perspective. He's going to come at it mostly through the lens of VIX. So VIX futures, VIX options, talk about things like contango and negative roll yield and different strategies that would work, why people like to buy calls in VIX versus buying puts usually, and things like that. It's going to break down VIX in a lot more of an introductory level capacity for a lot of you out there. So a nice compliment once you've read some of the other books to maybe take that next step if you're looking at trading volatility-oriented products. Probably also talk about some of the ETPs out there, your VXXs and your UVXYs of the world and all those, why you should never buy and hold them, fun things like that. Then if you want to step up to the next level, like one of our listeners asked earlier, Ewan Sinclair, a regular guest on our network. He kind of wrote one of the seminal tomes of volatility trading called, appropriately enough, Volatility Trading. And I think it's on its 3rd or 4th edition on that one as well. This is going to be more advanced, going to be more of a quantitative approach to volatility trading. That's kind of Ewan's bag in a nutshell. He's been a risk manager and trader for a lot of different firms over the years. So he approaches it from more of that quantitative style. So if you want to take your vol trading to the next level, look at things from a more quantitative approach, then you could do worse than looking at Ewan's as well. Ewan, a great guy. He's been on our network many times, never reticent to share an opinion with you, which I like about him. Dan, any others you could think of on the vol trading space or in other areas that you want to recommend, sir?
Well, like I said, I haven't really read any other options books proper, but I did read there's a really great book out there. I don't know if you can find it. Let me grab it off my bookshelf. Hold on a second.
Allow me to fill while Dan's gone. If you want to spell Ewan Sinclair, it's a weird spelling. It's E-U-A-N, I should say, and then Sinclair, S-I-N-C-L-A-I-R. So if you're looking for that one on Amazon, even though if you come up, you search for Dan's or any of the other books I mentioned, it should probably be there somewhere in the recommended on the next tier down or so. All right, Mr. Dan, have you found your book?
Yeah, it's called The Technical Trader's Guide to Computer Analysis of the Futures Market, which was written by Charles LeBeau and David Lucas.
That's a sexy title, baby.
Yeah, it's a long title. But I will tell you what, I don't know if this sucker's in print. It cost me $70 about 30 years ago. If it is in print, despite the fact that it was published a while back, I really recommend that. It is an amazing book on technical analysis. So there's one good recommendation. And then, another one that I just finished reading is Misbehaving by Richard Thaler, who is a behavioral economist, and really, really interesting. It touches on a lot of the behavioral economic concepts, and kind of gives a really interesting history of how it evolved. Really, really good book. He's a very good writer. He gives a lot of information, but keeps it pretty interesting, tells a lot of stories. It's really great.
Another one here that I know a lot of people are going to ask about. I don't put it in my recommendation list, and I will tell you why. It's, of course, Talib and the Black Swan. People ask us about this one all the time. This book is another one that has exploded. It's one of these New York Times bestsellers, sold a bajillion copies. It doesn't need us to recommend it, and I probably wouldn't really for a lot of newer traders. And the reason why, Talib has built this brand around this Black Swan. This notion of this Black Swan has become this thing, this epic event that could be devastating for your portfolio or devastating for whatever it is you're looking at through the lens of the Black Swan analysis there. This thing has become a brand. He does speaking gigs all over the place. He makes probably way more money speaking about his books than even he made us selling the book to begin with. But the reason I hesitate to recommend this for newer traders in particular, and a lot of professionals I knew had this perception as well, is you can easily come away from this book thinking, man, these Black Swans are imminent. And they play it up a lot to try to scare you. That's part of the branding. That's kind of what it's all about. And then you should really be out there hedging at a feverish pace in order to prevent yourself from being wiped out by the next Black Swan. And the truth is really almost kind of the opposite. If you actually go look at Talib's trading, and we did this a few years back on Volatility Views. I'll have to go see if I can dig up the episode. I remember we had Jared Woodard, who does a lot of research now for Bear Stearns over there. He was on, and a few others, and they were all stunned at the fact that Talib wasn't out there buying a ton of crazy puts. In fact, he was doing almost the opposite. Not quite, but he actually sells ratio put spreads. He sells out of the money puts, and he buys more farther out of the money puts. So in the near term and in the near sell-off, he's actually short a lot of premium, which I think blows a lot of people's minds when they first hear that. And it makes sense if you think about it over the longer term. If you want to stay in that game until the Black Swan hits, that's the best way to do it, or one of the best ways to do it. But it blows a lot of people's minds who they come away from this book with the wrong impression. They think they should be hedging like crazy, and that could lead you to doing something that could be catastrophic for your portfolio, like buying a ton of really expensive, let's say 5% out of the money puts in SPY right now, and then rolling them every month like clockwork until the quote-unquote Black Swan happens. And you're going to end up giving up a huge amount of money, especially now. The skews are ridiculous. On a normal year, you're going to pay somewhere around 8 to maybe 10 or 12% just buying those out of money puts every month and rolling them. This year, when skews are ridiculous, you're going to pay even more than that. So is that something you really want to do? Probably not. So that's why I caution people to stay away from Black Swan, at least till maybe they're a little bit more sophisticated, lest they come away from it with the wrong impression. Dan, do you have any thoughts on this one and just the general madness of the Black Swan brand that has exploded around the world, sir?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things. One is I feel like that was a really, really great book, but it was kind of like reading one of those books where like my mind already worked that way. And so it wasn't necessarily, I mean, it kind of was profound that somebody was somebody wrote something on that subject, but just having been a market maker, like, I'm reading it. I was like, it was like reading thoughts in my own mind a little bit. And I don't know, like, I might consider taking the other view from what you said, Mark, and I might consider like recommending that book to people who are just starting out, because so many people make the mistake of like, hey, I'm just going to do this one trade that, has a super high probability. I'm just going to sell far out of the money puts. And, oh, look, it worked 10 months in a row. I'm a genius, until the black swan comes by and just like completely annihilates you. So, I mean, I think people should read that a little bit earlier on. Now, that said, even though it is a great book, like you might find yourself sitting in your room by yourself reading this book, rolling your eyes occasionally, because Talib can pontificate a little bit, but it is a really great and useful book. Oh, and I found a couple of the books that I was a part of, by the way, if we're still interested, unless we moved on from that subject. But
go for it, sir.
Yeah, there was this one. I guess I was part of a few. Advanced Trading Strategies and Options by Amandio F.C. da Silva. I still haven't found that darn Chinese one. It's laying around here somewhere. And then I think there was one, Alan Northcott. I think I did something in one of his, and then I mentioned Charles Cottle. So yeah, I just figured I'd throw those out there.
Yeah, I moved my bookshelf around quite a bit as well. I had some books I wanted to mention this as well, but I cannot find them for the life of me. So I can't, if I can't find them, I can't recommend them here on the show. But if I dig them up, maybe we'll do a bookshelf version 2. I'm sure you guys will have your own suggestions. Obviously, our live listeners did. I'm sure a lot of you on demand will have ideas for books we didn't mention here or other things. By the way, before we get off this topic, let me leave you with a couple other just fun ancillary books. The ones that kind of got me into the world of options. And I've said it many times, we just had Jack Schwager and our hot seat for our pro Q&A sessions. If you missed that and you're in the secret club, you can go check it out on your pro podcast feed. It's there. It's a great conversation. But I told him this. I said, your Market Wizards book, and then the guy he featured in that, Tony Saliba, the original Market Wizard, we also just had in the hot seat not too long ago. So you folks in the secret club are getting some good folks to pick their brains of over there. But that chapter with Tony in that original Market Wizards book definitely intrigued me about this whole options thing. So I would definitely say, if you want a fun one, go check out that one. The rest of the Option Wizards, I should say Market Wizard series, kind of spins off in other directions. If you want to check those out, that's fine. But the one that really intrigued me was, of course, Market Wizards, the original one back from the 80s. Then, of course, speaking of the 80s, this is not really an options book, but this was one of those seminal cultural experiences that everyone that was a professional trader had. There were a few things, and he walked on the floor of the SIBO. Everyone had seen Wall Street, obviously, and they could quote Gordon Gekko endlessly. Everyone had seen Trading Places, so you would constantly hear at the end of the day, turn those machines back on, and just about every other line you could get from Trading Places over the course of the day. And everyone had read Liar's Poker. That was the book that everyone had read down there. And so all the cool dudes that we were, when things were slow in the pit, what would we do? We would play Liar's Poker, so we could be like the Solomon guys from the 80s. There was a little bit of derivatives in that book, but it's mostly kind of Michael Lewis's coming of age in the 80s Wall Street era book. It's just a great glimpse into those crazy times over there at Solomon Brothers in the 80s. And another one, I guess, I don't know if I would lump this in the fun, but it's interesting. If you like historical views on markets and derivatives and trading, then Against the Gods, The Remarkable Story of Risk. It's by Peter Bernstein. And I'll just give you the quick blurb from it here on Amazon. It says, with the stock market breaking records almost daily, leaving longtime market analysts shaking their heads and revising their forecasts, a study of the concept of risk seems quite timely. Peter Bernstein has written a comprehensive history of man's efforts to understand risk and probability, beginning with early gamblers in ancient Greece, continuing through the 17th century French mathematicians of Pascal, and up to modern chaos theory. Along the way, he demonstrates that understanding risk underlies everything from game theory to bridge building to winemaking. So it's interesting if you like a bit of a historical flavor and kind of the early incarnations of our markets. And of course, things like probability do factor well into options trading, so it has a lot of overlay there as well. Dan, those are just a few of the fun ones, the kind of fundamental ones to me. Do you have any fun ones you want to add to the list, sir?
Yeah, there was one that I read recently. It's called The Biggest Bluff by, what's her name? Maria Konnikova, I believe it was. And it's not about option trading at all, but there is a little bit of crossover there. It's about a woman who was a writer, a freelance writer, and it's a true story. It's like she documented her journey. And she decided that she was going to play at the World Series of Poker. Only problem is she'd never played poker before. So she enlisted one of the top poker players in the world who incidentally was a former option trader. And, she talks a lot about game theory and just logic and game playing, I guess you would say, which I sure did a lot of studying when I was a clerk to prepare myself for option trading. So that's a really great one. The Biggest Bluff. Check that out.
The Biggest Bluff. We tweeted out that we're debating whether new traders should be reading Black Swan by Talib, and people are chiming in saying yes. And of course, some of them agree with you, Dan. They think new traders should read Black Swan. What do you folks think? Have you read it? What are your thoughts on that? I mean, it's obviously become a big brand name in the world of options and derivatives and markets. Whether you can disassociate that from the true intent of the book, I don't know. I think some of the other books you've mentioned are better for the beginners than maybe down the road you can get there. But Dan disagrees. So where do you fall on that? Speaking of falling, we got to fall out of here. But before we do that, let's do a real quick mail call.
Mail call. Time to look at questions submitted by our listeners.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the mail call. Let's pay off some questions of the week we asked you really quickly. The last time Dan and I were live on the program was the week before Thanksgiving. We had to put a couple in the can for the holiday, so it's actually been a couple of weeks. So let's pay off a couple of the questions we were talking about then. First off, the question of the week that week was, we asked you which of these tradable products is most volatile right now, Tesla, Bitcoin, Nat Gas, or VIX. And you guys were actually smart. You went with Nat Gas, 31.6%, and that was actually the winner. The actual winner. At the time we ran the poll, Nat Gas was at about a 96%. We're looking at kind of straight at the money 30-day vol, nothing crazy on these. Tesla was a 62%. A lot of you went for Tesla, but that was number 2 in your voting, but it was a distant ranking here for the actual vol. Bitcoin was at a 78, so much more volatile. And at the time, the VIX, the 30-day at the money vol was actually around a 65 to 70. So it actually, in the order, would have been Nat Gas, Bitcoin, then VIX, and then Tesla in terms of rankings for vol. So interesting. Nat Gas creeping its way in there. We also asked you a fun holiday-themed one of what are you most thankful for, which market trend or development. Gave you 4 choices there. Options volume explosion, the crypto rampage, meme stock madness, or the bull market breakout. A lot of alliteration in that one. And it was a weird tie with the crypto rampage and options volume explosion both getting about a third of the vote, and then about almost 17% each for the meme stock madness and bull market breakouts. Our audience a little bit split there. And this week's question, which is very much up in the air right now. We asked you a simple one to kick off the week. We saw, of course, Omicron on Friday. We saw then a big sell-off, then a rally on Monday, sell-off again yesterday, and now a rally again today. So the big question has been, will VIX close above or below 20? Dan, I haven't gotten your thoughts really quickly. Give us your thoughts on this whole Omicron madness and the volatility that has ensued from it. And then B, what is your vote in our poll? You think we're going to close above or below 20 in VIX this Friday? And then C, more importantly, what do you think our audience is voting for, sir?
Well, I mean, just like anything with the COVID stuff, I mean, we have to wait until the smart people, the scientists, figure out what's going on with it, right? And I don't think we have that data just yet. And then, of course, half the people aren't going to believe it for whatever reason. But anyway, I think we're not there yet. And I think by Friday, we're not going to be there. We're not going to know if this is, a really terrible, virulent thing or if it's a breeze. I've kind of heard both. And there's no point in believing either just yet. We don't know if it's super contagious. I have heard that it is, but I don't think that that's confirmable just yet. So I don't know. I mean, in 2 days, the VIX is not going to be below 20 in 2 days. It's going to be above, I think. And I would think that since we have such smart listeners, that they see it that way too.
They are a smart bunch, but I remember this poll started on Monday, which was a rally day, so that could have influenced it as well. But right now, they are over 2/3, 67.2% saying below 20 and only 32.8% saying above 20. So it looks like we are seeing, as we speak, VIX was trading around 23 when we started the show. Looks like the sell-off mitigating a little bit now, and VIX trending back up to close to 26 again. So that certainly could perhaps put a damper on this poll. You got a few more days to get out there and make your voice heard over there, listeners. At Options is the place to go. All right, everybody, I want to thank you for joining us there. If you're a Secret Club folks, I want to thank you for joining us. Of course, we have coming up later today, Brian's going to be live to tape, I believe. It's hard to get him live on the huddles when we just did one a few weeks ago. So he tried to do one, hopefully around once a month or so out there to get Brian live for you guys. So we'll have him back on again soon. Of course, back again Thursday for your double dose of TWIFO and Option Block episode 2. Friday, ball views. And of course, for all you Secret Club folks, you get the exclusive Options Oddities. If you like all the stuff we're talking about, the rating and everything here, you like unusual activity, you want to help and analyzing it and looking at it, at some trades and some actual trades we're looking at right now, Options Oddities is the place to go. Coming back on Friday should be a fun one. I can see the Rock Lobster's already sending me trades he wants to talk about. So a lot of good stuff lined up for this Friday. And speaking of rating, Dan, if folks want to learn more about your options rating, or as I called it earlier, the options pragmatist, where should I go? What should I do?
I'll tell you what, I actually have a webinar tonight for those of you who are listening live. It's going to be at 6 p.m. Central Time. And you're invited. Just make your way on over to markettaker.com and click Join Now. And if you don't get an invite, make sure you just contact me. Just go to the contact page, and I'll get you in.
There you go, markettaker.com. Dan's always got webinars cooking over there. Get over there. If you're listening live, you can get there tonight. If you're listening after the fact, should be up a little bit later today. Should maybe still have some time. And of course, if not, you can still head over to Market Taker Mentoring, what the cool kids call and check it out. See what they have scheduled next. There's always a webinar coming up over there at Market Taker. And let us know your thoughts about your options bookshelf. What are some of the books you use? Maybe you started with Dan. A lot of you have written in. You like Dan's book. Maybe there's other ones. Maybe you have different views on some of these books we mentioned here, like Natenberg or Macmillan or Options Playbook or any of these other ones. Or perhaps you have other books we didn't get a chance to mention you think are worthy of an honorable mention here on the program. I have a feeling we're probably going to be doing a bookshelf part 2 once we get all of your honorable mentions out there. But we do love to hear from you. Keep those questions and comments and book recommendations coming. And we'll be back again next week. Another episode of Options Bootcamp. We'll see you then.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.